we're talking today specifically about maybe having a counseling session, welcoming a neurodivergent counselor into an online setting, whether that be online via a video application or via a telephone, text, or email. So using technology, what do we need to know? Is it different, Rory?
Yeah, and I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is the rise of the online world since 2020. For those of us who can remember, we had the COVID epidemic. What happened was that online and telephone counselling went from quite a niche activity to an essential activity through those lockdowns. Then it became part of a very mixed economy of offering to clients. And as we know, online counselling is very different to face-to-face. There are mechanisms, psychological processes, and safety aspects. Perhaps something that slid under the radar a little bit in the online world is that people who are neurodivergent may have specific needs to have online and telephone counselling or text-based counselling. One of the interesting things I found was research by Howard and Sedgwick in 2021, so relatively new research. And one of the things they came across after speaking with neurodivergent clients in medical settings was a good proportion of those who are neurodivergent, specifically those with autism, didn't like using the phone and found it a barrier to reaching services. So a bit of a salutary lesson for those offering online and telephone counselling. For some people, the phone may not be the best medium, and that's something we really need to take in account when meeting our clients first time on listings or websites, Ken.
Thank you, Rory. You started this off by saying we all know online working is a specialist area. So pre-COVID, there was no formal online or technology training in core counseling training. If you did cover it, it would be just a brief touch on it. So the curriculum has changed to focus on the fact that there is an online element or a technology element. The ethical bodies have adapted their recommendations and their best practice guides for how we should work. The BACP here in the United Kingdom have issued a curriculum of what you should study, what topics and areas you need to understand to be able to work online. It is not the same as face-to-face. Then you look to invite a neurodivergent audience for that use of that technology in counseling. Then there are additional considerations. I very rarely answer my phone. I let it go through to voicemail, and then I'll pick up a different form of communication to carry on the conversation with that person. What I don't like about phone conversation is the immediacy of it. That person speaks now and I have to answer immediately. Maybe for this reason, written communication for many neurodivergent clients is a preferred way of communicating. It might be email communication, where there is time to think and process before answering. One of those reasonable adjustments might be that if we are communicating via telephone or an online video platform, more time is given for them to think about their answer and come back with what they want to share. So more pauses might be a reasonable adjustment. We may have neurodivergent clients, and this is not just applicable to neurodivergent clients. This is broader than that. We may have clients who wish not to show themselves on a video platform. They may wish to use an avatar, or they may wish to use a picture of either themselves or just an inanimate object and just work with voice. Now, this can be really helpful for that neurodivergent individual because they don't have to try to maintain eye contact. We've spoken about reasonable adjustments in person within the room where we might turn the chairs away from each other. If you think about video platforms, most of them will put two passport photos of each other, yes, basically sat by his side. And in a way, you'd feel that you're looking into the eyes of that person, and that can feel uncomfortable. Maybe a reasonable adjustment is that it's okay for that person to turn off their camera. But that leads to other considerations as well, such as Are they alone in that room? Is there anybody else that can overhear the conversation? Are they in a safe place? So we would need to think around that and maybe have that kind of a discussion. The final thought from my side, Rory, is when we do hold online therapy, very often in my experience, you might be seeing a client who is sat down, maybe in a room, maybe on a chair, maybe in an office, in a kitchen, but generally they might be sat down looking at maybe a laptop or a phone and interacting in that way. With a neurodivergent individual, they may feel safer in a dark room. They may feel safer lying down with the blanket over them. If I was your client and you'd seen me a few times before and I had not shared that I was neurodivergent, but one day when we had our meeting online, I was lying in bed, you might have questions around that, but we would be looking differently if it was a neurodivergent client that we were working with, Rory.
Yes, we have to think about meeting the clients where they are. It may very well be that when you meet a client online and they're lying in bed, that might be very uncomfortable for the therapist because this isn't what we do. We usually turn up and we're usually sat in seats. We usually look at each other. I think that kind of thinking needs to be re-examined because some neurodivergent people, they have a strong reaction to bright lights, so we might see them in dimly lit rooms. It might be there's a sensory consideration that the client feels safer if they're under a blanket. Now, unless you know how neurodivergent people interact with the world, it can feel a little different as a therapist. But as you say, knowledge is a great thing. Giving a client choice is a strategy to manage not only their sensory considerations, but also how they feel. I would think that nowadays, those working online may have some kind of conversation within their website or their listings about how they work with neurodivergent clients, speaking directly to them before you've even met the client and saying, it may be that you don't like lights, it may be you prefer not to use the phone. In some situations, you may want to have a blanket. It'd be useful for us to talk about this before therapy commences so I could get a better sense of you. And I think it's all about making your offer clear to the client and making sure that you understand as a therapist their frame of reference. The eye contact is a classic one because in Western societies, we're drilled into us from children. Look at me in the eyes. And if you don't look at someone in the eyes, it's considered untrustworthy. Or there's a lot of communities who don't have eye contact. I work with a client who came from Pakistan and she didn't like eye contact. It was a big struggle for her because her son was at an English school and the teachers always used to say, look me in the eye. And it was quite a challenge. The same thing happens with neurodivergent clients. They find eye contact uncomfortable. It's about setting your practice up for that diversity, which is, of course, neurodiversity. And there is more neurodiverse people being recognised now and recognising themselves as neurodiverse than ever before.
Indeed. It's an important topic, and it's recognizing the hidden generation of all those people that may have not been diagnosed and went through their whole life facing all of these challenges and working in a way that welcomes them into our therapy. And what we're doing here is we're building on the formal training foundations. And that's why I started this by saying it would be hoped that at this stage, anybody working online or with remote technology would have done a comprehensive course in working online to understand things like the disinhibition effect or black hole or the other psychology that plays out online that maybe doesn't play out in a face-to-face setting. In the same way as we would not expect that somebody might be counselling a neurodivergent client if they hadn't gone and trained to become a counsellor.
Yes.
The same way we would hope that then nobody would be counselling a neurodivergent client or any client at all online or using technology if they hadn't done the training to gain the competences within that area. So we're building on our existing training. And when we're looking at neurodivergence, we're talking about understanding what challenges they may face, how they may show up, what we may see in that, and how we can best welcome them by making reasonable adjustments ourselves with the knowledge that we hold. One of the areas that is covered extensively in core training to work online or with technology is managing risk in the online setting. And I wonder, Rory, if you could just touch for a moment on how that would differ if we were managing risk in online counselling for an autistic client.
Yes, the first thing is working online and working in the room are clearly different. If you're working in the room and someone becomes unwell or says that they may be thinking of taking their own life, they're in front of you and you can take action. If someone bluntly has a heart attack, you phone the ambulance up and they come to your practice rooms and medical aid is given. If you're working with someone online on a video platform and you don't know where they are, then it's very difficult to get medical attention to them. So making sure that when you work online, you have a contract and you have contact details, emergency contact details is essential. But specifically about autistic individuals, there is a lot of research now that says that people who are autistic, not all, but a substantial majority, have an increased risk of other mental health challenges, including a heightened prevalence of suicide ideation, which is why we must always think about risk management. And it's especially critical, it's sharper in our thinking when we're working with neurodivergent clients. And the way we do that is to review and clearly outline our contract, that we have safety protocols, contact details, and emergency contact information. Maybe someone who knows the client's having counselling, so you can contact them if they become unwell, is going to mitigate risk, because the risk would seem to be higher with those people who neurodivergent or on the autistic spectrum. So keeping that very sharply in our mind.
Thank you, Rory. That was beautifully outlined. When we're working with the client online, we're going to be looking what their support structure is, who they have around them, and we would do that in face-to-face client as well. Do you know, mapping a support structure and understanding what that looks like is important if you're working with a neurodivergent individual. Within neurodivergence, in ADHD and certainly in autism, there can be overwhelm, there can be meltdown where the person appears to become very agitated, very angry almost in a moment, or not necessarily anger. It can be overwhelm, it can be anxiety, but it comes all at one time, and it can seem like it comes from absolutely nowhere. You would want to already have knowledge of what support structures are in place for that individual. You would want to know what their special interest is or what the activities are that restore or rejuvenate their points. So if I was working with a client and maybe that client gained great comfort from their animal, if I saw them getting really agitated or anxious within the session, I might say, I wonder if the dog is close by and can Tittle come and sit with you now? Or I might say afterwards, you could now go and spend some time with your animal. We're talking meltdown there, where it seems quite explosive. The shutdown is really the opposite. It's almost like the person goes mute. They disappear. They go from being interactive within a situation to just being there physically. We'd be looking to map to support systems to understand how that person is as we end that session. Online, we don't have the luxury of that person being in the room where we can say, are you okay? And we can really check in with them. So counsellors working with neurodivergent clients must recognize and adapt to diverse communication preferences when prioritizing written communication to support unique session environments if need be. By fostering accommodating and understanding approach, practitioners can significantly improve the therapeutic experience of autistic clients